In this episode, join us on the docks of Hoboken, New Jersey, as Marlon Brando earns his first Best Actor Oscar for his performance as Terry Malloy in On the Waterfront. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to this deja vu episode of the 3324 podcast. I feel like I'm saying this stuff over, Eric, but I don't know why. Do you ever have that feeling?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
When a cat walks by you and then the cat walks by again.
You know, we're in the Matrix. Most definitely in the
Trinity
Matrix.
turns around and said, "What did you say?" I saw a cat walk by, and then I saw it walk by again.
It was a glitch. Let's put it. Yeah, there's a
glitch in the Matrix, but you are experiencing us in our purest form. So thank you for joining us. You can find us on social media at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. We post the shit out of those sites, so go check it out. Right?
Whoa!
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's the point. That's selling it, man. Yeah. That's a.
You know, put that on a t-shirt. You're gonna make $1 million.
That's a hell of a. I'm representing tonight. Got this from the shop.
Yeah,
right?
We've got our own shop.
We got our own shop.
Believe it or not.
See? Yeah.
Custom stuff, not just logo stuff though. Not everybody wants to wear a 3324 podcast shirt, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But we've got other great retro related items too, which are really fun. You can show your geekiness.
Well, I think it was one of the last episodes we did. You demanded, you were like, "Where's your shirt?" So I decided to wear
dress
it
code.
tonight.
Eric was not in dress code.
So here it
is. He was going to get a write up.
That's right, a reprimand.
So joining us for tonight's episode, two great guests. Kelly Cooper, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while.
Hello, great. Thank you for
Doing
having me.
Good. Awesome. And of course, Mr. Roland DeRucci, creator, founder, distributor, editor, director, writer of the Ready Speaker podcast on YouTube.
That's quite a mouthful.
Did I leave something out?
No, I think that was it. Handsome, but that's
Key gripped, best boy, overall handsome fellow.
How do you feel about such praise, Roland?
A little hyped up, a little aroused, but it's fine.
Better than the first time.
Always a pleasure, sir. Welcome.
We're going to drop a link to the Ready Speaker podcast on YouTube, so go check out Roland. He covers a lot of great music, movie, television, series, streaming. You name it. He's got his interests are far deep and wide, and he covers it all on his podcast. So by all means, please go see Mr. Roland DeRucci. He's got a great show. And he's got a really neat intro graphic. I'm like, how did he do that? I'm afraid to ask him.
It's amazing what mushrooms
like this
will do.
computer generated thing. It comes up. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
We've got a logo.
I see ELO. We got an ELO logo.
Yeah, we've got the ELO here. Plus, we've got the logo back here, though. We've got the banner. So thank you both for joining us. The month of March is Oscars month, and we decided for Oscars month that we were going to do a series of 5 episodes, each one about a Best Picture Oscar-winning film. So we are starting, and we're going to go in decade order. So we've got one from the 50s. We skipped the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So this is going to be kicking off our Oscars month, and we're going to be talking about the fantastic, the great film On the Waterfront. So let's jump into the stats before anything happens, and we'll go from there. So this was released in July of 1954, written by Bud Schulberg, directed by Elia Kazan, nominated for 12 Oscars, and it won 8. An amazing feat back then. For a small film like this, the budget was only $910,000, and it had a $9.6 million box office. So it made back 10 times what they thought it was going to do. I'm just going to run down. We're going to run down the accolades for this because since there was so many, I think we should really kind of give it some respect. Maybe not a lot of people know what On the Waterfront is, Eric. And considering that we've only done 2 other classic films and they both starred Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was time for us to move off of Bogart. As much as we like him,
moving off of Bogart onto Brando. There we go.
Yeah, we're staying in the B's.
Yeah.
Next will be Benny Hill. So this was nominated for Best Motion Picture. It won. It was nominated for Best Director. It won. It was nominated for Best Actor, and it won. Marlon Brando. a hat trick of Best Supporting Actor nominations. 3 gentlemen were nominated from this film. Unfortunately, not one of them won, maybe because they were both all so strong, and how could you pick one of them? But Lee J. Cobb, fantastic. Carl Malden, American Express card, don't leave home without it. Rod Steiger, also 3 great supporting actors nominated. Best Supporting Actress, Eva Marie Saint, she won. Best Story and Screenplay won. Best Art Direction, Black and White, took home Oscar Gold. Best Cinematography, Black and White, also won. Best Film Editing won. And then it was nominated for Best Music Score. And it didn't win. So 8 out of 12 is not a bad haul.
No, not at all.
You know, what do you think, Raul? Did you realize how well recognized this film was?
Yeah, no, I kind of grew up watching this. You know, it was always, you know, the old TVs, you know, Channel 13 and Channel 11 movie weeks and stuff like that. So I always remember the weight of it. And everyone speaking about it, rewatching it and kind of going back into the history of the director, Elia Kazan, as well. That actually gave me a little bit new insight into it. And then it made me look at it a little differently this time.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's start there. Usually I ask if anybody saw it in a theater.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm going to skip that question since it came out in 1954. I don't think any of us were there.
No.
We can't lay claim that we were at the premiere. So we'll leave that one.
Unless it was a re-release at some point.
Yes.
Well, yeah, but usually the original,
original
one. But yeah, the Elia Kazan is the director, and in the 1950s, there's a section of Congress or in the government at the time called the House Un-American Activities Committee. I'm butchering it, but you can find it on Wikipedia. Basically, trying to root out communism and bad people, right? And especially post World War II, Roland, correct me if I'm wrong. There was what was called the Red Scare. You know, they were, you know, senators or congressmen or whoever it was in the government were afraid that communism was infiltrating the United States. And there were secret pockets and cells of communists gathering together, especially in Hollywood. Yeah. So what they started doing was pulling people into committees, into hearings, and say, we know that you know communists, and if you give us the names, we'll leave you alone. Whether or not you knew anybody. And a lot of actors refused to play ball with that. And they were blacklisted as a result. And a lot of them, and you see like Orson Welles at the time, went over to Europe or went out of the country to start making films because they effectively couldn't really work. Elia Kazan named some people. I don't actually know all the details of whether or not these were actually communists or he just gave people names, but he wasn't looked upon too favorably, right, Roland?
Yeah, no, that was a problem with it. Even though I think Rod Steiger said he wouldn't have taken the role if he had known about what he said to the committee, because he was actually against that a big deal. Mm-hmm. And even there earlier, he's a Greek immigrant from what is today Turkey. Like in the middle of Turkey. That's where he was born. And he grew up in a neighborhood in Istanbul. So very religious oriented. And even the style, it's amazing when you look at it and you look at when it was made and how it was made in the style and how much this film impacted a lot of future films. Even Eastern European films, I would say. I would say a lot of European films really emulate this specific style. Even the famous film we talked about recently, Copland.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A parallel version of Copland. It was kind of scary
I
was watching it. Yep. And I was like, oh my God. I can see the influence of what this film, how long of a reach his style of directing and storytelling put forward. And again, with the anti-communism was very funny. For me, it's funny because one of the main threads in the film is workers' rights, which, supporting unions, which is pretty much the anchor of all communism is unions. So it's actually really funny that he actually went on, to a committee, spoke about communism, but communism was actually centered on unions in this country. That's where their growth came from.
Yeah, but before I kick it over to Kelly, when this film was in pre-production, Columbia Pictures said we'll make this if you make the bad guys communists,
right?
Not union guys, but if you make an anti-communism film, we would really like that better.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it does, there was enough of that going around, right? That mania and that kind of, kind of like I said, what they call the Red Scare of everybody's a communist and you don't know where they're lurking. And it was just kind of crazy. And he kind of stood around and said, no, this is not what this is about.
Yeah.
You know, it's about this particular small world story, which would not have worked. You know, Marlon Brando and Xbox are battling communists. It's like it doesn't fit. But Kelly, what's your connection to this film?
My husband.
Your husband?
I had not seen it before. I met Eric, but we had seen it years and years ago. And when I revisited it, I realized how much like little nuanced stuff I had missed the first time, because there's so much action, there's so much going on that you can really get not lost in it, but you kind of get caught up in the story. And I was watching it from the romance side of things, like how's this relationship going to, and so that's kind of how the first viewing was. And then the second viewing was much more in depth with the union and all of these like side fighting and kind of the Goodfellas aspect of, like all these guys, working for one another, and like, you got to be on the inside, and, you don't just show up and get your day's work.
And this film has the unfortunate baggage or anchor of having one of the most quotable lines in film history. So people really base the film on that. Like, I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
I could have been somebody. And they do the Brando impression. And that is it is an important part of the film, but it's not the film. And if people only ever hear the impression of that, they think it's something else, right, Roland? It's kind of like, that's what people have taken away from on the Waterfront is the Brando impression, which leads us to, in the 50s, a new style of acting was coming forward called method acting.
Yeah.
Okay, which was different than the acting in the 40s, where method acting was a little bit more internalizing and trying to relate to these experiences or having drawn from lived experiences and then bring them into the character. I think that kind of brings filmmaking into the 50s, Roland. Do you think that the rise of method acting with Montgomery Clift, Brando, you would see James Dean in another year or two, actors of that style, I think kind of brought a breath of fresh air to filmmaking in the 50s.
It definitely brought a sense of realism, I think, or at least what we perceive as realism. And if you look at it, the styles are very New York and East Coast too. Even their diction was actually, again, a similar movie, Rebel Without a Cause. In this movie, I was like sort of comparing them on my own. And the diction is very unique. It's very New York based. These were New York acting houses that sort of developed these characters and these internal dilemmas. And they were all moralistic. So it's a different kind of filmmaking where the story's not the moral, the individual's the moral compass going through it. And it definitely changed how films and stories were being told at that time, because you're going from their perspective. Their demons eating them up. And this is another character where his demons are eating him up. And until he finds a way to turn to a place where he can be happy, I think he says it in the film, this is the first time something's good happening for me, and I don't want to mess this up. Yeah. That's a pivot point that I don't know if characters really said it before this film. They didn't express it, they didn't vocalize it before this kind of film. And for Elia Kazan to bring that out in an actor, that's
the notions of good and evil were always usually well defined. And in this case, Terry Malloy, Marlon Brando's character, is kind of being pulled in two directions, but it's not overt, and the character isn't necessarily a bad or good person. He's just kind of a guy that's just been kind of going through life, just kind of whichever way the wind blows, whatever the prevailing winds were, and they were towards the corrupt union, because his brother Charlie, played by Rod Steiger, was like the right-hand man to Johnny Friendly, played by the great Lee J. Cobb. So he was just kind of a low level. He was a boxer. He was a bum. He's known as being a bum. He's not to the level of his brother. His brother's a bookkeeper, so he's kind of important in the corrupt union organization. And his brother Terry kind of works on the docks in the hatch, with his hook, kind of slinging bags, and he's just kind of like a guy that's just kind of going through life at this point until he meets Eva Marie Saint's character, who's looking to find out about her brother who got killed because he was about to testify or give information about the corrupt unions.
Yeah, no, it's really, I found it really interesting too. Again, just looking at the whole, the theme of it and where it was coming from, with the backdrop of the New York skyline behind it. It's like you're outside of the city, outside of a gate. So it's almost like you're gated in. So that the visuals were really interesting. And as a character, Brando's character was, he was just trying to be a good guy to everybody because that's just how things moved. He was a cog. And I think at the moment he figured out he didn't need to be a cog anymore. And very, like I said, even with Copland, I know we talked about it recently, but it was so like true to almost the pacing at the end, where he felt he had to break that cog to reset it and to reset it right. And again, I think movies didn't really. You had bad guys, James Cagney, you had Bogart and all these guys talking about corruption. But to me, this is probably the biggest hammer, breaking through that ceiling of, you're talking about the mob, you're talking about, subtly ethnicities and how they're controlling certain areas and everything. And even he's being leveraged even by the government. They're kind of a prick to him too. No one's treating him nice. It's only the one girl, and he had to confess about what happened to the girl and her brother.
Yeah.
And he's
Which is a great scene when he meets her when he meets her by down like the junkyard. Father Barry, played by the great Carl Malden, a cigarette smoking, beer drinking priest, which is why I got my beer tonight in honor of Father Barry. Also, not afraid to swing. He's not afraid to throw some fisticuffs, but he's kind of like I don't know if he's the angel on Terry's shoulder. He's almost like the devil on Terry's shoulder, like kind of really prodding him.
He's a bit of an antagonist, yeah.
Yeah, he's really kind of putting it in his face that every person is morally obligated to do the right thing. I don't care what your bag is. I don't care what your problem is. That's your problem to deal with, And he really kind of is a straight talking kind of street priest type thing, and in a tough parish, realizing that there's a lot of these things going on, and he decides to involve himself in it. Like he has a crisis of conscience, I guess, as well, of like, I can't sit around and let these people be bullied and let them be killed. I need to stand up. And that's when you're right. He kind of antagonizes Terry.
That's a product of the time too, I think, because priests were a lot more politically active, as well as Elia Kazan's upbringing. The Greek independence a lot of it was motivated by church officials in the Eastern Church. So even that growing up with him, that's part of his storytelling, of knowing that sort of ideology, that the priests and churches fought for the common man. It wasn't really for the big institutions. So even bringing that character into the fore, things very different than you're saying, the complacent priests, the stereotype of the Irish priest, taking a couple of sips, that was prevalent in the movie industry until that time. And they weren't really the ones saying, you got to get out there and you fight. Are you going to be a man or not? Know what has to be right. He forces him to tell, the love of his life now of what he did, that he knows could shatter that, everything. And he had to sit there and take it and watch it. And it was a great scene because they didn't explain. They just showed the anger and distress.
Yeah, and you hear the horn over when he's trying to explain to her. Eric, it's almost like we're watching somebody discover things in them that they didn't know they had, right? Because he always was just kind of like always Charlie's brother. Yeah. And little by little, he realizes that he is able to, and he learns it the hard way, that it's not always comfortable, but he learns that he has the ability to take control of his own life.
He does. And his brother all this time has been keeping him down, right? He could have, that's the line. That's the famous line. It goes, I could have been a great fighter, but, you had me taking dives. You had me, working for this guy. So in a sense, his brother was keeping him down. A lot of people have been keeping him down in this film. So, he's discovering something of himself, that strength. And that's
even
why
himself was keeping himself down, right?
That's right. Well, that's why you have Father back. Like, he just thinks of himself as a bum. Like, I'm just, they're kind of throwing me a bone by, then he's not even working. They got him like, he's doing favors. He's, Johnny Friendly, is giving him money. It's like, oh yeah, you do this for us and we'll take care of you. You don't have to work. You don't have to do anything on the docks. You could just sit on the bags and, and just hang out while everybody else is busting their ass, So, and that was the life he was living for quite some time until, he meets Eva Marie Saint and she, and I think, going back to that, like, confessing aspect, I kind of think she knew all along that he was part of something. Like, she kept alluding to that fact that he was, that he was, but she wanted to hear it from him, I think, and I think, and of course, Father Barry convinces him, I want you to tell her. And that's going to like set you free. That's going to be, your big coming out moment in the sense of standing up. And from ever since then, it's like he, and people like Kazan, like we're saying, is this referencing your, being in front of the committee and giving away those names and stuff, he goes, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like the scenes, like when he's in front of the committee and he gives up, he's doing and he does what he does, even though Schulberg will disagree with that. And he'll say, no, it's not about that at all. He's not trying to make this about that, but it is somewhat, because they
could not be. Yeah.
Right. It could, he put that in there, but yeah.
Kelly, do you think, do you think his transformation was genuine? Did you feel kind of like, that he was kind of slowly being torn or slowly being brought into the light, and either through the not only through what Father Barry and Edie were doing, but also the way Lee J. Cobb and started to treat him and the way he started to treat his brother. So in one way he's being pulled at one way, but then he's also being pushed, which is stuff that he might have normally taken. Like he might have normally taken that kind of stuff before, but because he was being pulled, it was a different dynamic.
Yeah. And something that I related this to and that gave me that same feeling was Rocky and even $1 Million Baby, where they're just existing and something happens that makes that thing go off in your brain that says it doesn't have to be this way. I can make a difference, or I can, like, it's a dividing point. It's a before and after. This is how I was, and then this event happened, and now this is how I will be. And I think it was very genuine. I think that he probably hasn't known love very much. He hasn't known honesty, that wasn't self-serving. So, once he got a little taste of that, I think he realized no matter what I do and say from this point forward, I will be different. And he chose that difference instead of just saying, okay, I'll just go back to the way I was.
Yeah. I think he's been with women or broads or dames, right? But real, no, honestly, there's a difference. But never someone that challenged him. Like Edie would kind of challenge his, and not forcefully, but just ask him questions. Like she would just kind of ask probing questions of him. Why do you feel that way, or how does that make you feel? And it brought his defenses down. There's the great scene after the church scene where the guys come and they start just pummeling all the people meeting at the church. Brando gets Eva Marie Saint out, and they're walking through the park, and it's a great moment. I don't think it was scripted, where she drops her glove, and then he picks it up and he's just kind of playing with it, and just kind of like, to me, that's like the method acting. It's kind of like he grabbed that moment and they kept it going. And they're just talking, it's a real genuine kind of thing where he's not trying to get over on her. He's just kind of talking to her, and she starts asking questions, and he's kind of like, the way they used to whack me at the school, and they didn't think, and you see him kind of start to open up, even though you don't know where the relationship is going, because she's supposedly in a kind of on the track to be a nun or to be, in the
everyone
church
assumes
sphere.
that, but she makes it very clear to him. No, I'm just going to a girls' school. I'm just, going because I think she wants to make sure he knows that's not her track. You know what I mean? Like,
he's like, so what are you going to be, a nun?
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely an attraction there. Yeah. But
yeah, that scene actually in the documentary, they explained that accidentally happened in rehearsal, where she dropped the glove and he picked it up and did that. And then they wrote it in because it was so genuine and such a good thing. Yeah.
You can see on her expression, she hesitates asking for the glove. So there's a give and take of that property, and he's fiddling with it. He puts it on, he stretches it, and even the way he's speaking to her is a very, like, a nonchalant. I don't say nonchalant, but he's saying, "Hey, other people, let's make sure you're home safe." Yeah. There's genuine concern between both of them building their dialogue. So he's trying to build a relationship, not usually probably the ones he's used to. And her being detached, she's showing him a way out of Hoboken. Even later, she says, "You can go to Ohio. You can go anywhere." He's probably never thought he could leave the waterfront.
But he's also showing her his side of things as well, where her dad, Pop, sends her off to the school. He's like, you don't belong here. Go back to the sisters.
He had her bags packed. He goes, "I got a bus ticket for you."
Yeah, and he's such a great character in the film Pop. Too. He's amazing. But anyway, it's like
ain't fit for the eyes of a guile.
And I think you're right. And I think
went down at the dock.
She's coming around to that. Yeah, there's sort of all that Catholic guilt going on, and with the priest, and and she's the upbringing of her, and that, but she has never seen that that kind of side of it herself, or at least experienced it, and he's introducing her to that world. But yes, but like you pointed out, Roland, he's very protective. He becomes very protective of her. Yeah,
I was just going to say he was less of a tough guy and more of a protector of her.
Yeah.
He was not afraid to let me get you out of here. Go this way. It's going to be safer. And then when they were together, it's kind of like that.
Which is the first
that tough guy kind of facade kind of comes down.
That is the first step in his redemption. Right there is her.
That scene.
Well, just the whole, like what we pointed out, like her being his, like, it's not said, it's not, he doesn't say it, but he takes on that role of being her protector. And I think that's, it starts down that path of his redemption.
Without a motive.
Exactly.
Without a motive, which is interesting.
That's right.
Again, he doesn't have a motive for it. He just wants to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that just shows his inner self. So he's coming to terms with who he is. He's always done things without a motive. He never did it for the money. He took dives to help his brother. He didn't do it for the money because he got nothing from it. Right. He got the other guy on the roof, Edie's brother, because we needed to talk to him. He didn't know what they were doing. I thought they were just going to talk to him. So he's always just helping people out. So he never has a motive beyond just being comfortable. That's all he wanted. Even the idea he says it in the film too. I just want to be okay. I just want a job.
Just want a few potatoes.
That's all he
wants.
That's
it. That's it.
Potatoes is all I want.
Yeah,
he's a simple man with simple aspirations. He's not aspiring.
He doesn't want handouts. He's
not a big dreamer. He's not this big dreamer, and I'm gonna,
He accepts who he is.
They took the dream from him, and that's his realization. They
he
all
understands the reality of life and in that great monologue, which is a bum, which is what I am. Like, he understands that. The better days of what he wanted to be are gone, but that doesn't mean that there's not something else that he can be. Like, I guess he thought probably he's only as good as he is strong, meaning he's only as good as he is as being a boxer. But it turns out that he has another skill set that is there's an honesty there. There is a true nature to him. He understands, where Charlie has no problem coloring outside the lines.
Yeah, he's too far gone.
Whenever it needs to be, but Terry still had that innocence of the truth, and he took care of pigeons, so he was a caretaker.
Yeah,
right. And he was taking care of Joe. The Joey's who even Marie Saint's brother got killed. He was taking care of those. There's a lot of parallels with the caring of the pigeons as well, and how they mate for life and they don't leave each other. And he's explaining that.
And there's that innocence.
Notions to her. And I think that was vis-a-vis him also probably feeling that way is, when you find somebody, you stay with them.
And that's so genuine too. Like with her brother, like he was set up to call him out so that they could do with, the guys waiting for him on the roof so they could chuck him off the roof. And he's like, I didn't know you guys were going to kill him. I just thought you were going to lean on him a little bit. He's trying to come out of that. Like, he feels so guilty throughout that, like he knows that.
Yeah. He doesn't want to face. He always dodges it.
There is absolutely nothing he could do for these people that's legit. That is, he's not, he is going to be pulled in, where his brother is like so far gone. I mean, he's the right-hand man. He's got
no by association.
That's right. Yeah.
Because when he no matter, even when he tries to do something good, he's always looked at as Charlie the Gent's brother, right? When they have this secret meeting down in the basement of the church to talk about the unions.
Yeah.
And Lee J. Cobb's character, Johnny Friendly, sends Terry down. He goes, find out who we don't know who the players are. We want to know what's going on. And he walks in and Dugan, I love Dugan. K.O. Dugan. He's like, who invited him here?
He's awesome. He's actually based on a character, a real life person that was on the production, who was working really closely with Bud Schuberg, who was talking to like real longshoremen. He was like, a lot of the extras from Hoboken were in the film, and this guy named I think his name was his last name was Brown. I think his might have been Arthur Brown, or but they called him Brownie. And he was always on set because he was a real longshoreman, and he experienced a lot of this kind of thing. And so there was a sense of, so they kind of based the character of KO
Oh,
on
really?
him. Yeah. Because he was like that kind of like lively.
The one of the best lines in the film is when they're on the dock and JP Morgan is they call him, he's the banker for the mob.
Yeah.
And he's lending money to Pops. And Pop's like, oh, you're screwing me again or whatever. And JP says, you'll thank me when I'm dead. And KO's like, why don't you drop dead now so we can test that theory? That's one of the best burns ever.
Oh, he's got a lot of them. He's got a lot of lines. I love the line where I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm poorer now than I ever was when I started. And oh
my God, that guy is such a treasure. He only did a few films. He didn't do a lot of work before and after, but and then the scene when Father Barry gets to him, he kind of, hey, you got a cigarette? And then Kale kind of looks at him like, oh, okay, this priest is asking for a cigarette. He must be on the level. And he gives him a cigarette. And then, kind of Father Barry kind of wins these guys over, that he's like he keeps saying, I'm not just a guy with a turned around collar, like he was always trying that he's not afraid to get his hands dirty in this film. Karl Malden, Roland is a kind of a, we know him from the streets of San Francisco as people from a certain age, and we know him from, like I said, the American Express commercials. But
Streetcar Desire,
but in this film, he is just really a force to be reckoned with. He really kind of, but as he brings the fire and brimstone, literally in his monologues, the monologue after KO gets killed, right, where this is a crucifixion and Jesus is down here. I mean, that is some powerful. Some powerful acting that he puts on film.
He brings a lot to it. He's actually an immigrant also. I think he came from Croatia or something. I think he's a Croatian immigrant. So he came as a kid. So you have a lot of these inputs of these people who came from other cultures were able to see. And that's, I think, the key of method acting also, is to really look around you, like you said, experience things. And these individuals came from different societies, and they came here and they had all these different perspectives sort of mapping out in their heads how to bring these characters to life. And I'm sure he had some influence too. The Hell's Kitchen was full of, it's a huge Croatian church in Hell's Kitchen. I don't know if you've ever seen it. And he's probably part of that community. And he probably had a priest who was very fire and brimstone of, you have to help your fellow man and you can't back down. And him bringing that to that character, to that dialogue of Right Across the River, is really, really impressive. I mean, his weight, his passion in his eyes, like you said, he had it. You see it in his eyes, you see it in his face. He's trembling while he's saying what he's saying. Yeah. In those moments, because he knows
there's a couple of those scenes. When they're bringing KO's body up through the hatch, and he's riding up, and Pops is sitting there, and Pops just takes the pack of cigarettes. He doesn't say anything. He just like lifts it up and offers him a cigarette, and Karl Malden just like takes the cigarette. Or the scene in the bar towards the end when he knocks out Terry. And he's like, give me a beer, because he's like, so like, after that, it's just intense thing. He's not immune to getting rattled, but he also stands by his convictions. Kelly, do you think that there was just something about his performance? I don't know, that like it's easy to be, he's a priest, but I think he really helps push the story forward.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting that you don't always know what side he's on. Like, you feel like, is he just, what is his motivation? What is, his ultimate goal out of this? Because you feel like he's in some points torturing Terry. Sometimes he's like, promoting him. It's like, what exactly is his role? But he's not like the narrator, but he's definitely like he moves everything along, and he's like the forward motion of it.
Yeah. Would you think he's the conscience of it? Would you say?
I like that. Yeah, conscience of it.
I think so, because when you first sees Terry, he's like, there's a disdain. Like, what do you want? Like, he knows he's working for them. Like, but he knows that he knows that Terry is his pet project, as it were. I think, and I think he's like looking to bring him out of that. But at first, he doesn't want anything to do with him. He's kind of like, what are you doing here, kind of thing. And what do you care? And, so yeah. But, and against like, even people in the church too, or like the other priests are like, what do you see what you cause? Like they're not with him either. So he's literally standing alone.
Yeah.
In this
there's
thing.
the scene before Terry meets Edie with, like we talked about, where where Terry finds Father Barry, and Father Barry's kind of blowing him off. He's like, well, if you're not going to talk, I don't got nothing to say with you. And he like walks away, and Terry pursues him.
Yeah.
Right. And they come to that shot where they're at the corner, and he says, I called Edie here, and she's like down below. And he's like, here's where it is. Here's where the rubber meets the road. You got to go tell her now.
Mm-hmm.
So he was kind of playing with them a little, kind of fishing him in and pushing him away, because he knew that would make him come in and pursue him even more. Like, because he knew that he had kind of, like Charlie said, they gotten his hooks into him.
Right.
Yeah.
Was kind of filling his head with these notions, but it's what Terry, it's that physical stimulation that Terry needed, like the kind of wake up, that he's more than just this lackey guy that kind of like Lee J. Cobb, we kept you around for laughs, but now it's business.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he ever was kind of a walking joke to these people, but Father Barry saw more in him. So, and maybe it was to Kelly, to your point, it might've been for his own uses as well, to kind of, he knew that Terry could help take down the mob. So maybe Roland, maybe he was manipulating him a little bit, because he knew that he might have been the weakest link that he could get to.
I agree with that. And even like thinking about it, because it is a Terry movie, but if you look at the storyline, the thread, it could be almost a Father Barry movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
The killing happens, and then he gets essentially a rebirth of conscience when he sees the dead body, and they're like, how do you stand by and let this happen? You're our priest. You're our parish priest. How do you stand here and let this happen? And that turns him where, like you're saying, even the church is like, what are you doing? You don't rock the boat. This is not what you do. These are our members, and that's it. And he's pushing along the parts of moving people into place and instigating a little bit and making it happen, because he knows in the big grand scheme of things, sometimes you have to break away to make things right. And that's what he's showing Terry to do. Hey, I broke away. I broke away from what the church is telling me to do, is just follow and don't rock the boat and don't worry about it. Every Sunday, pass the pan around, get some money, we're good. And he's not that. He's saying no.
And they're hiding in the church walls, right? The other priests, they're he's out on the streets, right? He's walking the streets. He's in the throng.
He's drinking priest.
Yeah, he's standing right there on the docks, watching it all happen, and he's his presence is felt.
To me, it could be a Father Barry film from his perspective. It's almost from his perspective. Equal weight, I would say. I know Brando's the lead, but story-wise, it's almost equal weight of who's telling the story.
Yeah. Well, I think that, he is based on a real character, and his name is John Corridon. Right. This really, and then like Terry's character is Anthony D. Vincenzo. Right. But unfortunately for him, things didn't exactly pan out like they did for Terry. He tried to up, and it didn't happen that way in real life. But you like you say, it is very much both their stories. I think it's a duality there. It's a path to redemption, and it's also a path of reawakening, rebirth, like you mentioned, Roland. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right for both. Father Barry also talks about the crucifixion, right? There's that monologue when this happens, it's a crucifixion. And when I watched this again, I couldn't help but think, it came back to me at the last scene, where Terry gets almost beaten to death. And he needs to walk to the where the dock is, where the guys are working. And if we all go, and these guys turn so easily, like first it's like he's one of theirs, then all of a sudden it's like, well, if you walk with us, we'll go. But anyway, and Father Barry's like, you need to get on your feet, you need to walk yourself, and you need to kind of go. And if you go to the front, and show people we're not going to take this, they'll go with you. And there was a kind of a low angle shot where Terry's all bloodied and he's kind of walking like up the ramp to the dock. For some reason, it brought an image of Jesus, like the crucifixion, of like carrying the cross. I don't know what, I don't know if it was supposed to mean something like that. Roland, did you?
I definitely saw that. And I think, again, that's probably Elia Kazan and his religious upbringing. He was very strongly religious. And that imagery really came across in this. I got the same feeling of him being resurrection, or doing that last with the cross, bearing the cross, and he's the one who's sacrificing himself for their sins. and that's probably the right way to even interpret it, where he sacrificed
I wasn't
his
sure
own
what it would.
self-defense.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what it would mean. Like
Even though they were finicky, that's what it is. People are finicky, and in the Bible, everybody's finicky, and they're sort of moving back and forth. And Jesus is saying, "Well, I'll take it all on me," so we go in the right direction, and that's pretty much how I think this story is told as well. I think it is some of that. And again, I think Kazan, as a director, his beliefs really came forward, with this, and it's a lot more mystical. Eastern Church is a lot more mystical than the Roman Catholic Church. So there's a lot more imagery in that, and there's more spirituality in a way, and I think that really was prevalent in the storytelling.
Yeah, Martin Scorsese would say that as well. Yeah. Stations of the Cross. This was obviously a huge influence on everything he's done.
Oh yeah,
in his work. That's
the pacing, the angles.
This movie is like, everything to him. He doesn't even like to refer to it as a film as much as it was a phenomenon or an experience.
Are you kidding? Johnny Friendly's bar is almost recreated in Goodfellas.
Yeah,
it's got the sliding doors that separate that back room.
Yeah,
you got the bar in the front, and you got the doors that kind of where the things in the back go on like separately.
Yeah,
in Goodfellas, the bar, the whatever lounge it was, is laid out the same. It's laid out almost the same exact way.
It's because of him that I actually that first time I ever saw this film was because of Martin Scorsese. After seeing Goodfellas, I don't think I saw it. I don't think I seen it until the 90s.
Eric, watch this.
But hear him talking about how much of an influence it was, and prompted me to go back
Right, there's a thread from this to Scorsese to so like we're saying, a lot of movies. Lords of Flatbush, even I would say. But Stallone with the pigeons on the roof, I was like, oh my God, he's been doing this forever.
Yeah,
he just really pulled a lot of this character. This is a how-to for a lot of actors.
The influences are far and wide.
Even like I said, Eastern European films. I know Nick Lash is not here, but he's the only Albanian on this thing, so I'll say it. But there's a lot of Eastern European, like communist era films that they were very artistic, and this is how they could sort of tell their story with subtext. And the style is very strongly influenced by Elia Kazan. It's the angles,
even with the score.
The score is amazing. The fact that William Bernstein scored it,
punctuating.
It's
the one and only film score he ever did. Leonard Bernstein was this movie. And
it's amazing that it came across with that power that moved it along. There wasn't just music around to be music for music's sake. He was moving moments around. He was moving emotions around, moving emotions
absolutely
forward. Again,
it wasn't incidental music.
Right.
It added to the melodrama of it, like the intensity of it. Even the love scenes, like the quiet scenes, were elevated to that level. There was such intensity in in like when they're on the roof, when she's like, they're almost touching hands through the gate, through the fence, and there's that music that just builds to this big,
the music, the
big
pigeons.
thing.
I mean, it's just everything has weight. Even the death of the pigeons when he's broken because his pigeons are dead. I mean, he's broken. Like, this is what they took from me. They're taking everything. A freaking pigeon they took from me.
Yeah, you really see how tender he was, Kelly, in that scene when he's kind of because when he goes to see the pigeons and Eva Marie Saint is walking near him and he's behind the door but he's waving her off.
Yeah.
Because of what he's seen and I'm like, she doesn't stop, like she doesn't listen to him. Yeah. She goes anyway, but he's and then you see him just like sitting on the ground, like why did he do this? You really get to see Brando really, I don't think he might have ever been better in a film. Do you think?
No, and I think that the funny thing about that scene is that he's not mourning those birds. He's mourning that lost child that did that. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel about it. That he's saying, oh, we lost him now, because he's turned this anger, against me. And, it's just, I'm sure, yes, he's sad for the birds as well. But overall,
but that he's, now that child is lost.
Yeah.
Well, I think, like, to your point, I think he sees that there is no end to this. It's so far reaching that you get children. And interesting note, that kid became a longshoreman. So
really?
He was local to Hoboken.
And it was only just a couple of years after he did the film that he was really young and
fake his age so that he could join.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's pretty
wow, this movie really had an effect on him.
His father.
That's just the way it is in Hoboken.
Well, his father was he disappeared. He was a longshoreman, and he like disappeared off the docks. He was convinced that they murdered his father. So wow. he was he was supporting his mother, and he was only like 14 at the time or something like that. And just a couple of years later, he just became a longshoreman. And he's like, his mother's like, "Why are you doing this? You could do anything. Like, I want to do this." So
it could have been an actor.
Yeah, it's
one of the golden warriors.
He doesn't like his performance in the movie. Apparently, he's okay. Absolutely, okay. Yeah. He's like, I get embarrassed when
he does all right
again.
The Munsters, the guy from the Munsters is in this.
Fred Gwynn. Yeah.
It didn't really have any lines, and
also, Pat Hingle.
Pat Hingle is the bartender.
Yes, as the bartender. Yep. Yeah.
Robert Downey is in this. I don't know if that's the same Robert Downey.
The original Robert Downey?
Yeah, he's in this as an extra.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
He was a New York type actor at the time.
Yeah,
so that makes sense, actually.
Yeah.
That's true. You know who was originally up for the role of Terry Malloy? He had a handshake deal. Was Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
He was coming off his Oscar win for From Here to Eternity.
Okay.
And he kind of had a gentleman's agreement with it. And then things happened. I don't know if he walked away from it or they always had, they were trying to get Brando, and Brando kept saying no. So then what they did is they went and did a film test with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward to kind of make Brando jealous.
Yeah.
And Brando came back and said, "Okay, I'll do it." And then Sinatra's like, "Well, what about me?" And they're like, "Forget it." And then he's like, "Okay, I'll be Father Barry." And they're like, "We already have Father Barry." So Sinatra was just kind of. So I don't know if you want to do that to Sinatra, especially in the middle 50s. He was kind of, he was connected if he ever was.
That's right, and he's from Hoboken as well.
Yeah, that's why he wanted to do it. He's a hometown. Yeah. He's a hometown guy.
Yeah,
coming off his Oscar win. What's that?
He never went back to Hoboken.
He didn't.
No, he hated going back there. He would refuse to go back there, which is actually kind of funny. But he always refused to go back. He was like, "I'm out. That's it." So
he probably.
But when it's convenient for him though to use that as the excuse, like I'm a native Hoboken, but he doesn't give a fuck about.
I make the story real. Yeah. When it matters for him, absolutely right. But definitely the East Coast actors. This is probably one of the, not the peak, I would say, but this is the start of that big push of East Coast New York actors. Method acting and the locations and the accents.
I was just going to say really stuff filmed on location. This was
that's key, man.
Like,
that is
those MGM, those Warner Brothers pictures from the 40s were on. They would use exteriors for stuff, but everything was on sets. And
right.
That's right. You felt
that
the
park
poverty.
Is still there. That park is still there.
Oh, really?
So, that park's right across.
I wonder if that.
I
was wondering if that dock was there with that little.
The church is still there.
Houseboat was there.
Yeah.
What about
the dock? I think got revamped. Those are all like high rises now because they rebuilt that whole area. But it's like high rise buildings with restaurants. But the church is still there. I've been there. So I was in an audition. It was right next to that church. So that's all I remember.
And then of course the extras too. And they said that because it was so bitter cold, like Kazan was like this is a curse. Like nothing's going right. I can't see the New York skyline. Everything's too gray and fog. He goes, but that served the movie though. That was part of it.
Yeah, I'm very with you on that.
You were convinced that it was cold, and you could see the breath and people smoking and those faces, man. My dad was a longshoreman for many years, and I worked with him a couple nights a week when he was working out of Tarrytown, and
that's where the convent was that Edie went to.
That's right. The country, as she calls it, right?
Yeah, she's like Tarrytown. He's like, where's that? Oh, up in the country.
In the country, right?
That's like 2 towns over from where I grew up. What do you mean it's the country? What country?
But you watch this movie and I see like these faces, and man, that I saw those guys like working with my dad, like they've been doing this for so many years, and the look on their faces and just how they're reacting to the cold and the environment and the hard work, and it's so convincing.
Man, you got the one guy like he doesn't get chosen, and he takes out like the sandwich he was going to have for lunch.
That's right. Yeah,
and he just starts eating. And he's like, I'm not
just come working, so I'm not just come back tomorrow.
Just have the sandwich now. Like Hoboken was as much a character. And the grayness and the depressing nature of it, and how these people lived they all lived in kind of shabby apartments, and it really kind of spoke to the nature of they weren't doing glamorous work. for big money and had an aspiration to get a house somewhere. They were living, you said, like paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes
it's like tenement apartments, railroad flats.
Yeah,
They had one black actor in it, which I know it doesn't sound like much, but back in the 50s, that was a big deal to have somebody portrayed as
the other
equal.
thing that they were saying that back then they were segregated, so he should not have been there, but they put him in to prove the point of I thought that was fascinating that they made that decision, even though that wasn't.
Yeah, right. They would have been separate. Now, definitely, I noticed it right off the bat. Again, you don't think of it today, but back then it was very segregated.
Yeah.
Even Brando was like he didn't stay in a cushy hotel. Right. He would come to the set, like he would like take the subway, to the set every day, or to the location, and he was wearing the clothes and he had the hook. People just imagine what people were thinking, and like seeing Marlon Brando sitting on the L or whatever, like with a freaking hook over his shoulder.
That was before he bought his island in the Bahamas.
Island of Dr. Moreau.
Tahiti or wherever he bought the
island. Up with a kimono, that would have been great.
Actually, that's what a lot of even stars today say.
There's a fly on my face. Was that Apocalypse Now? Like one of the outtakes? Like
wiping the sweat off with the rag. Anyways, what were you saying, Cal?
No, I was just saying that even today, actors say that being in New York, you can be completely invisible, even as a famous person.
Yeah.
Because people are just getting where they need to go, doing what they got to do, and whatever,
this was only Brando's sixth film. I mean, he was kind of a star on the rise. I mean, he had done The Wild One, he had done Streetcar, and those were his two big films up to this point. And then this was the one that just kind of shot him into the stratosphere. But then he started, even after this though, then he started to really make weird film decisions, right? So he actually kind of, didn't, he was Brando. That's all you can say about it.
That's true.
Brando.
Yeah.
Brando does what Brando wants to do.
Yeah.
Right.
But he was never like, you can't take your eyes off him in this film. We really didn't talk about him too much. Like, what's that?
He didn't like himself in this film.
No, he did not.
He walked out of it, actually.
He didn't like his performance. He did not like his performance whatsoever. And everybody's like, what are you, nuts?
Yeah.
It's such a nuanced performance.
The vulnerability.
But you don't tell Brando that, you know what I mean? It's like, apparently. So
maybe
I don't know.
Maybe he's being a contrarian on purpose of like, everyone likes this, so I have to like.
Because he's Brando. Yeah. Because he can. Because I can.
Yeah, because he had that, you really see him transform, or you see him from one to another, right? In the scene with Edie in the bar, it's like, what's my philosophy on life? He's like, get them before they get you. But then it leads to other tender conversations. So he's really kind of going through different phases within a scene, but they're not like wild, broad strokes. They're very subtle. The character is very subtle, even though he seems like he's a dope. There's the underlying, there's layers to that onion that's what Edie is doing. Edie is peeling away the tough guy facade, and she knows that there's a hurt person under there, or there's a person that kind of has something to offer that
absolutely
is tender, and he's not like these other people.
And even the scene performance. Even the scene where she finds learns the truth, and she's in her slip. In the apartment, and he comes busting in. You think he's gonna do something like really like rough and tough, and that just doesn't happen. It's just they just embrace, and
he breaks the shit out of that door though. That thing comes off the frame.
Yeah,
he really I don't know if that was a stunt door, but he really
they don't make doors like they used to. I'm just saying.
But also to comment on the scene in the cab too. It's like everybody remembers the line, but that's not even the whole scene.
Yeah.
It's everything about that scene. Rod Steiger's performance in that scene, where he
turns in that scene and he realizes what he is to his brother and how he's failed.
Oh my God!
You see it in his face.
Absolutely.
He failed his brother.
And Brando's reaction to when he pulls the gun on him, he's like, Charlie, what are you doing? It's like I'm not going to be intimidated by you. Like you're my brother.
He was disappointed. He wasn't mad.
That's heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to see the look on Brando's face. He's like, what are you doing? Like this is this
is how far you've fallen,
right.
because of the scene beforehand with Lee J. Cobb. He's like, you can have it your way or his way, but you can't have it both ways,
Yeah.
And you see how detached he becomes Johnny Friendly all of a sudden.
Right.
You know, he's like, you know, I don't care. You know, no one's going to get in the way of the money, the stream of the money. I don't care who they are, even if it's you.
Yeah.
You know, and he's like, oh, see you later, deep thinker.
Yeah.
Lee J. Cobb. He's such a
oh, he's great. He's phenomenal.
He's dusting off the hot seat for me.
Yeah, his screaming is the best.
His screaming.
12
Angry Men too, man.
Just his screaming.
His slow burns they're not even slow. His slow burns. He goes from 0 to 60. They're dusting off the hot seat for me.
How do you know he's doing it? It's right. It's right. It's all right there. It's all right.
No one knows.
We're a law-abiding union.
It's great. I think even talking about that, like where the turns are, you have Rod Steiger, Charlie turns in the cab. I think even Marlon Brando, Terry turns when they tell him, hey, Johnny needs to speak to you. And he goes, no, I'm going to send the girl home first.
Yeah.
That's his pivot. Like, no, and in front of her too. Like, no, I'm going to stand up to him.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a gopher. I'm done doing that. No, I'm going to take care of this first. Then he can see me. So you can see that's a real pivot in that character for strength.
And that's what bothered Johnny. He goes, oh, you know.
He's thinking for himself. Yeah.
Me,
right. That escalated everything. Now he's not my gopher.
Embarrassed me in public or something like that, right?
That's right.
Like,
yep.
So it's a great pivot points, great moments that you can really see where the character thinks.
Yeah, and you don't think it's a big deal at the time. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like that's a big thing at the time. Oh yeah, whatever, but it actually is.
Yeah. You see the characters thinking. I think that's the key with this story too. How it moves people and how it stays relevant is that the characters are really they're in the moments. They're thinking about the dialogue. They're reacting to what's happening. I know acting is reacting, whatever they say, but not everybody does it like that.
Yeah.
Where you see their eyes are working. They're digesting the words that are spoken to them or the moment that's there, and they're reacting to that in that way. It's not just simple reaction. It's okay. What do I do now? And their body language is there. There's so many little nuances of how they're. I mean, you have Johnny Friendly, how he adjusts his clothes when he gets frustrated. He's pulling up his pants because he wants to be a big boy. You know, he's pulling up his pants and making this suit, knowing everybody, hey, I'm a big boy. I came from nothing. You know, and they're pushing that, and even like and then they're in the trap, and they kill that guy, and they're all wearing their nice suits, and Father Barry tells them, you and your nice suits looking down, your nice coats, $150 suits looking down this life, you know, and they feel uncomfortable in these suits that probably isn't natural to them,
right?
You know? And these are these little pivot points of these characters' physicality changing throughout the whole story, and that's to me, that's the interesting part of this whole storytelling of how these characters morph within this little time frame.
Well, Roland, you mentioned eyes, and there's no better performance in terms of eyes as Pop. Because if you notice throughout the whole movie, he is a zombie. When he's on the docks, he doesn't look anybody in the eye. He's just he's staring straight ahead. He's like, here's handing cigarettes over. Here's Joey's coat. Take it. You know, he's not even looking at the guy. He just hands it over. The only scenes that he comes alive is when he's with his daughter, and at the very end of the film, when Terry is, walking towards the door, and Pop is like, he's looking at somebody and like hitting him, like, look what he's doing, like, all of a sudden he comes alive, but the rest of the movie, he's just
he's a cog.
He's just such a he's so lost, and
But Pop got his with Lee J. Cobb. He's like, you've been pushing me around for 30 years. And he pushed him in the water.
That's right.
I was like,
That's right. That's right.
It's a great moment. The physicality in that film is really, he did an excellent job of pulling the physical as well as the acting and the line reads and everything out of each person in there. So they were a unique character that was part of that tapestry.
Do you feel though? Let me ask you this: do you feel though it does tend to get a bit melodramatic at times? Like, is it that intensity?
I think
like Streetcar. Does. Like I had rented this with Streetcar at the same time because I was in the and I couldn't. The first time I watched I couldn't get through it because it was just so like, oh my god, this is so like too much. And there's elements of that in this film as well, I feel, but because of the environment, because of the whole,
I agree with you. I think it is melodramatic, but the thing, I mean, to that is like almost like starting the first chapter of a book, and I get through that melodrama part of it, and I get into the real meat of it, and then moves. Right. But also, when you look at the history of the director, and I did a little homework. So I read up on the history of the director and some of this stuff because I really wanted to understand more about him, and knowing where he came from and knowing all that stuff, it just made so much sense, his style and the direction he was taking with it. Now, hitting a note really hard with a hammer, sometimes you have to, and I think that's also why people have taken his style and pulled it into other worlds of filmmaking, like Eastern Europe, Polish, Albanian, Yugoslavian, all these Eastern Bloc countries. They really mimic this style so much because his storytelling is earnest. I'd say that's how I felt, at least. I know it's melodramatic in a way.
I think the melodrama gets a pass because of the masterclass of acting that you're seeing, right?
I agree with that.
For me, it's a forgivable. I'm okay with it just because of the great performances you're seeing as a result of the melodrama. That means we're getting to see people go even further. Like these great actors, they're not overdoing it. They're within their bounds. And they're just delivering great performances. So for me, it can, the music kind of pushes that melodrama a little bit.
That's right.
So it's kind of, it does it that way. It does it almost artificially, but it's not melodramatic through the acting. I don't think it's
I agree.
Isn't melodramatic. It's just more the kind of the accompanying stuff. So
to me, it's the setup. It's setting up the tone. And you get like a preface of a book. It's setting up the tone of where you're going to go. Yeah. Also, it is a film of the time. I mean, we're talking, this is 20 years after, vaudeville is still hot, until World War II. So people expected that. If they didn't have it, they didn't want to see it. They want 3 movies in a cartoon. That's what they want for their 25 cents. So him, bringing all these heavy hitters in it, bringing Brando, Bernstein. I mean, we're talking a sound, the music that the guy's a composer on Broadway. And then they're like, this is what we're bringing to you. We're bringing everything of high class quality.
Yeah. All of it brought to bear.
And we want you to see it. And it's on location in Hoboken. So you're seeing this gritty performance. You're seeing these actors who are coming up, a lot of them are new actors, method actors. This is definitely hot out there. And beautiful people. They're good looking people. So it's definitely a different time. It's not the aesthetic that was there before with film, with the just the looks and the lines in their faces.
Yeah, society was changing, so that
so this is
reflecting a little bit more of a genuine and raw. Raw
even
emotion.
The costume design was interesting. The choice of clothes, how they were. These were, these were people who bought stuff off the rack. You
see Brando with the ripped jacket when he came back from testifying. Like the whole back sleeve was like that was the best. Like that was the best. That was probably his best suit.
Right. So you see these little things. I picked up on that too. Even his pants are like stitched several times.
Yeah, they're like corduroy pants type. Baggy.
So. I think that realism and that melodrama it just hits heavy and
sure.
Like I said, I was just watching Rebel Without a Cause. Same thing. It's melodramatic at first. You're like, where is it going? By the end, you feel the pain.
Yeah,
you feel that pain, that weight of the morality of the storytelling. And I think that's a little bit different than what's happening. I don't know if you can make a movie right now where the moral is in that lead. The moral compass is right there. It's anchored in him, and he's judging the world around him and saying, "This is not right, and I have to make this right." At whatever cost. And
it's definitely of its time.
I see it almost as a play, and definitely. Kelly, I think you had asked, was this a play first? And no, but it did become a play. They did turn it into a Broadway production. It didn't last.
Was acting on theater too. His history was actually theater.
Well, it's just like the blocking and the movement and things. It's very play-like, which is actually, it just tells the story in a different way. And being that they were they were actually live and out doing this stuff to be able to nail that kind of feel is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank God this was never remade.
No, thank God. No, you couldn't do this.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
No.
And even when you think about it.
Schumachers on the waterfront.
Oh, God. Nipples everywhere.
Oh, my God.
Everywhere. But,
Colin Farrell and Joel Schumachers on the waterfront.
God, no. But the musical.
Baz Luhrmann.
Baz Luhrmann's, on the waterfront.
Sparkle, everything's all like Technicolor and spark. The ships are all painted with rainbows and they come in sparkling.
Ready to go. It's ready to go. We have a dream sequence and then it all comes back.
There you go. So,
that's it.
Alrighty. As we wrap this up, let's start to wrap up. And I want to hear these. We do go around with our movie things and we do talk about favorite scenes. So let's start off with Eric. What's one or two of your I mean, this is one easily to say everything.
Yeah.
But what are some of the high highlights?
For me, it's probably the death of Dugan. Is that scene hits hard for me because I love that guy. It's like, and he was the first. He's the guy that stood out before anybody, before Terry, and it didn't pan out for him, did it? It's like, so, but that's the reason why everybody's still like holding back. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to rat. But he, Malden got to him first, and look what happened. Like a crate of Jameson falls on him. So that's what we're drinking tonight, by the way.
And he got the crap. He got the crap kicked out of him.
Exactly, and he's just as bloody as Terry was. Right, baseball bats and whatnot. So
that considering using my head as a baseball.
And not only that, but Malden getting pummeled by like the fruit, and they're mocking him, and it's like, get out of here, and it's like, oh. Yeah, that's quite a scene because it felt real. It felt,
that's when the stakes got higher because that's also when Terry knocked out Tilio, because Tilio's like, oh, watch what I'm going to do now, and he's going to throw the.
That's right.
When Terry knocked him out, and that kind of started. Terry then was on a point of no return. So that's good choice. Good choice, Roland.
I have two scenes. Two scenes, actually. Sort of in line with Eric. I love the church scene with the disruption of it. So when they started banging around, it reminded me of like West Side Story a little bit. But again, influences are everywhere. And but that disruption of their meeting, a simple meeting, which wasn't actually that weighty. They weren't going to make any decisions. And that's I thought the energy there changed the movie tremendously. Where now is going to be aggressive. It's a war now. It's a battle between two factions of people trying to get their freedom, and then people trying to control those people they were controlling and keep everything status quo. And the glove scene with Terry and Edie, to me, is such a beautiful, beautiful, subtle scene of this awkwardness of two people trying to get to know each other in a world that probably doesn't really allow a lot of people to get to know each other. And that's like one of the prettiest scenes for me, just watching that. I watched it probably 4 times. I just kept going back. Because it was just so subtle. His hand movements, their awkwardness, and just that dialogue, the distance they have from each other, where they're trying to get to know each other and just moving back and forth and keeping that distance, keeping things a little formal, trying to go to the next stage. I just thought it was a beautifully acted scene.
Yeah, they're kind of circling each other. She wasn't sure how to get the glove. She wanted to get the glove back, wasn't sure. And
it was
he's just kind of fiddling with
little things. The eye contact was a little off, so they're like not sure if they can really talk to each other or at each other. So it's all these little things. I thought that was really for me. It worked. It made a good impression on me.
Cool, Kelly.
The scene where he finds his brother after they've hung him up, and how he's like tenderly like taking him down, and it's like, even though all they've been through, it's like it's still his brother, and the lighting in that scene is just so phenomenal. How they're doing, and them racing down, trying to get away from the car, and he puts his hand through the glass. That's also another one that sticks out for sure, because it's like, and it's like the scene with the pigeons, he's like, don't come and see this. He told her the same thing, like, you don't need to see that. She just does not care. Right up there,
comes out.
Broads.
Well, I think it's a big difference between a guy on a meat hook and dead pigeons, though. It's like
either way.
I think that definitely, to me, closed out their relationship, and really, it was so well done that I like that scene.
Yeah, but I agree. The Charlie, the death of Charlie scene. Brando says a line in there. He's like, go get father and have him come, and then come back. And he's like, and don't leave him out here alone too long.
Yeah.
Like that line just for some reason always hit. He's like, because the way he says, he's like almost as if he's alive. He's like, don't leave him out here alone too long. Like, don't leave him, even though he's deceased. Don't leave him. He still need, be with somebody, be with him. And then the scene following that is Terry. The board gets erased for Terry. All of the tenderness and all the things he was leading up to being taught get traded in for a gun, and he's going with he's going with violence. He's going, I'm going to take it out of their skulls, like that. It's his instincts come back to him of, I'm going to settle this the way I know how and the way I can do it. I'm just going to kill everybody. And that's when Father Barry comes in and says, is like, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. But, and he's trying, and Father Barry's just trying to cut through that rage. If he could just cut through that rage and get him back, kind of refocus him and reset him, which he does with the punch. When he punches him, then everybody everybody leaves, and it's kind of like it's a lost cause anyway. So then it's kind of like, they both kind of calm down, and that's when he's like, give me a beer, and then they both sit there. The priest and him just sit there and they drink a beer, and it's kind of like, because it was intense for both of them. It was an intense situation for, he probably, as a priest, probably went beyond what he would have done. He wouldn't have slugged somebody, but he's so passionate about this cause, or about Terry, and about saving his soul, as it were, and maybe that means something personally to him. Those two scenes connected, the death of Charlie and then the scene after, and are just really just powerful stuff. So.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for this episode. This is the first of many Best Picture Academy Award winning films. I can't say it for some reason, and it's only been one beer. But there's more to come this month. So for Academy Awards, we've got a bunch of great movie content coming. Roland will be back again. I believe Kelly will be back again as well in other episodes. You'll have to listen to see where they pop up again, though, because we're not going to tell you. We're not going to do that. So, but you can find us as usual at 3324 Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Go check us out there. New episodes come out every Thursday. If you're a regular, you know that. If it's new, well, mark it on your calendar. Put it on Outlook and it'll remind you. Or just follow us on your favorite app and you'll get a notification when there's new episodes, because sometimes we drop some special stuff in between. So that's going to do it. For Kelly, for Roland, and for Eric, this has been Dean, asking you to please be kind and rewind.